This is the Money Game Podcast with JC Peretz and Phil Pearlman on Technical Analysis Radio.
All right, everybody, we're back today with my friend Phil Pearlman, and we're going to be talking about trolls. Pearls, talk to me about trolls.
Well, listen, the bottom line here is we'll start at the end. And the end is that the world is filled with lunatics. And, the internet has put everybody, given everybody a voice, and the configuration of some social media sites like Twitter, where you can reply to anybody, gives those people a what they used to call a whisper bullhorn. So anybody, so there's 8 billion people in the world. There's a ton of them are lunatics, and they all have this freaking weapon in their pocket, the phone, where they can pull it out and bust your balls anytime they want. So it's just like so there's really, so that is the bottom line. And then, if the only thing you can really do about it is just either leave or just, blow them off, just ignore them.
It's really hard. I've found, I'm incredibly fortunate to have been tight with you and, guys like Howard and JB way back in the day. You tell me, JC, ignore the trolls, don't worry about it. And I took your advice. And, I don't really get trolled. Every now and then some idiot comes around, block, I never hear from him again. So I really don't see it a lot. What I do see more of are friends of mine, colleagues, associates, that the trolls really affect them. And not only are they affecting them personally, but they're affecting the decisions they make in the market and the decisions they make for their own businesses. I don't need to mention any names, but Phil, I see this every day, man.
It's a stoic, point of view that, we're responsible for ourselves. We make decisions in the world for ourselves. And at the end of the day, when we're on our deathbed, we live the life that we lived, and that's all there is. And so we can't do anything about other people's choices. We can only focus on our own choices. And the only, you're just going to do what you do. You're not going to save anybody else, worrying about seeing a pal of yours make a bad decision or get affected, go on tilt because some, random egg avatar on Twitter is busting their chops about something. There's just nothing you can do about it. Maybe you can, you have a conversation, whatever, but it's just the way the world is. You think about the extensions of human experience and the crazy things that you see people do in the world. You hear crazy stories all the time. There's that one account on Twitter that's like Florida Man, and it posts like police reports coming out of Florida that are just it's just a constant stream of insanity. So the only real choice that we have, at least from my point of view, is you just focus on yourself, focus on the people around you that you care about, and you do, you act in the way that's right for you. And that's all you got. Everything else is just, external, out of your control. That's my take.
Let's talk about the science of the troll, right? So the way I see it, the troll is going to read something you write or watch a video that you put together or listen to a podcast or whatever sort of content you're putting out. They're going to consume it. They're going to take the time to do that. They're going to take the time to then think about it. And then they're going to go out of their way to spread hate about those things. So if you try to flip the script, what does that person's life look like? What does that person's work-life balance look like? What is their business and their family life like if they have all the time in the day to do that and do that on a regular basis? You want to talk about the psychological flaws and the issues that troll has by doing such things?
Yeah, they're twisted lunatics, man. I mean, okay, I'll go into it a little bit. Listen, people have to substantiate themselves in existence, right? We are conscious individuals, right? We are aware. We have some levels of awareness, right? And, some people, the way that they sort of view themselves, their, sense of self-efficacy, their sense of self-image is damaged or peculiar in some way that is, affects everything they do, not just the trolling, but affects every molecule of experience for them is affected by a sense of self, and how they view themselves deep down, any layer of awareness, right? It could be completely unaware, undetermined, as they say, or it could be a high level of consciousness about it, obsessed about it even. And people are affected by the way that they view themselves, and so if there's something warped there, if there's something that is, on the surface, I mean, the classic sort of narcissistic pattern, there's many, many patterns. One classic pattern, though, is this very hyper positive but super sensitive self-image, right? So it's like super boastful, look how great I am, but underneath it, that's very, very fragile. They're not really that, they don't really feel that way about themselves. They're just kind of using that that sense of self-aggrandizement as a defense, as a sort of a cover over for really these underlying feelings of inadequacy, And so that's, I think, a pretty dominant, by belittling others is a way that they make themselves feel better. So they puff up that sort of cover or mask of self-aggrandizement. Look how great I am and look how crappy you are. That's, that's one way of looking at it. There's 1,000 ways you could slice this stuff. I mean, it depends what school of psychology you're from. It depends who the person is. There's all these different dynamics. That's one that I'm giving you. But it's a damaged sense of self. I mean, why else would you care unless you were making the comparison, right? Unless you were making the comparison, why would you even care? So you're comparing it to yourself. That's what's going on.
Yeah, why would you care? Like Tom Bruni, the sweetest, nicest kid, 25 years old, tweeting about corn, and then some angry farmers hating on him. Who cares? Why do you care? What Tom, you know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. One thing, Pearlman, that I've noticed, maybe an age thing, right? Because of technology, because of social, it really doesn't matter how old you are or your experience, and particularly in the market. I mean, listen, if you've been in the market for 12, 15 years, I mean, I don't care how old you are, you haven't seen anything I haven't seen, right? But then you'll get guys and gals for that matter, that were legends and rock stars way back in the day, and now nobody knows who they are, right? So I see hate being portrayed by quote unquote old rock stars or old popular people that are now sort of irrelevant, bringing hate to, younger people out there that are doing well. I'm seeing something like that. And then I'm also seeing it from, I guess, people that are just maybe frustrated with their careers and the way their career paths have gone, that are hating on those that are, still thriving and still building their things. I'm seeing that on a daily basis. Does age play a thing, a regret factor maybe? I wish 20 years ago I had done that. Talk to me a little bit about that.
You could be 25 or you could be 75, still searching for mommy's unavailable nipple. That's a good line right there.
What does that mean?
What I mean by that is that means that it's something in your childhood, right? Your mother's emotional unavailability, the breast. If that was not available to you, if you didn't get that nourishment as a 1-year-old, you either come to terms with it or you never come to terms with it, or you come to terms with it as you get older. You're angry with, your father for not understanding that you wanted to be a beat poet, and, you never got over that. Some people get over it. Some people never get over it. So you could have a 25-year-old who had a tough childhood, who got over it and is incredibly productive, incredibly gracious and grateful for others, interaction with others and mentors. And then you could have a 75-year-old who never got over it, who's still railing against the same conflict that they had and the same, whatever negative emotion they had when they were 2. So that's what I mean by it, And so there's individual differences. You actually ask a great question because, what makes it one and not the other? Or what makes it, can it be 75-year-old or 25-year-old? Individual differences. People are born with, it's a combination. It's nurture times nature, right? It's not, some people argue for nurture, some people argue for nature. It's a combination of the both. Stress diathesis model is the fancy term for that. And some people have this ability to learn to cope with things, and this natural ability, this biological based, born with it ability to cope with things better than other people. So you could have, 2 people that go through exactly the same situation, but they're different individuals, and one responds in one way and another responds in a completely other way. One person copes with it in a really adaptive manner. One person keeps hitting their head against the same wall for 70 years, man. That's where, you see a lot of alcoholics that way. You see a lot of, I'll tell you, really interesting corollary to that is, the research in the area of soldiers and post-traumatic stress disorder. The big question these researchers were asking, going back to World War II. So that's what, 80 years already or however long. Researchers have been asking, well, why does, 2 people are in the same battle. They both get bombed. Why does one get PTSD and the other doesn't? Great question, right? Same age, almost the same age, in the same battle, same explosions, watches their same buddy die. Why does one guy get it, one guy doesn't? It's how they cope. So, you're going to get 25-year-olds who are incredibly gracious, who experience gratitude, who have let go or learned to cope with the negative emotions that they experience or something they didn't get when they were a young child. And then you're going to have 75-year-olds who never got over it and are, basically playing out the same cassette tape, 8-track tape loop. It's Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah, and they never get over it, and it's just the same thing over and over again. And there are different types of trolls, Pearlman, and you have a lot of experience. You're in a different world these days, of course, but prior to what you're doing now, you lived in the trolls playground, right? You want to tell me a little bit about that? I mean, what sort of things did you see?
It was a great time, and we saw total lunatics. I mean, we saw people that would create, this was on StockTwits. This was back in the day. We were growing amazingly fast.
What years?
This is 2009 to 13, 14. This was the genesis of StockTwits, and it probably even goes back to 2008. The first StockTwits app, by the way, was built on Tumblr, and all they were doing was we were pulling in tweets that were tagged a certain way, like $AMZN would get pulled onto the Tumblr, and it was just this one long thing. And then you could organize it. It was like a search, and you could organize it by ticker. It was great. It was a great time, man. It was really great. But I'll tell you, you just get lunatics. You get people who they get blocked and they come back with another username, and they just go and attack people, and they just are relentless, and they're just mad at the world. You get this, the scenarios we were talking about before, the dynamics we were talking about earlier, you get that times 10 million, just the most, just so mad. And you could just feel, you could just sense that inadequacy underneath the bravado. I was talking about that narcissistic mask. You could just sense that while they were explosively angry and they were, had this view of themselves like they were king, underneath it, it was just this hurt little boy, or little girl. Mostly it was male. A lot of testosterone in there. And people would go to the lengths. We would get people we figured out how to find their IP address. And then they would go and scramble their IP address just to get back on the platform so that they could scream at somebody more, hey, Howard, you're a dick. They would attack Howard, and Howard was a little bit of a smart aleck. So he would be smart aleck with them and then block them, it was funny, but it was also, kind of a pain. And these people would go to stop at no length. We figure out how to block their IP address. They would get a IP address scrambler. And all of a sudden they weren't in Michigan anymore. They were in the Philippines or something, and they were back on with a different username. And they would get very vile. And, you see it now on Twitter a lot. You see these, a lot of the political extremists are pretty vile as well. So it's a similar dynamic.
Yeah, it just seems like, in a lot of these cases, they're just dying for attention, right? Like, that's all that they're looking for is how I see it. So by just blatantly ignoring them, that must just be incredibly frustrating to Mr. Troll, right, Pearls?
It is, I would say in that most recent description that I gave you, I would call it rage. It was a lot of rage. And so, and rage is really sort of this unstructured anger. It's like even more basic than just anger. Anger has something.
Which can stem from anywhere, right? I mean, it could stem from, family life, their lack of business, success, money, lack of love, whatever it is. It can come from that rage can come from a number of places, right?
That range of human experience is incredibly vast. And so the complexity and the dynamics of each individual are idiosyncratic. And so, it could be anything, man. It could be, and usually, like I said before, it's a stress diathesis. It's a combination of nurture and nature. There's people who are born and that are milder. There are people who are born that are more aggressive by nature, and so there's some of that in there. And then there's some of the experiences. And I also think that there was like an unleash of a new tool that never existed. And that is, ubiquitous publishing, right? Anybody can publish now. Anybody can go on StockTwits. Anybody can go on Twitter. Anybody can go on WordPress or Tumblr or Medium all of a sudden and say things that other people interact with, other people that are out there in this whole world with 6 billion people. That was a profound change in human expression that occurred. So we're still adapting to it. It's going to take many, many years. I mean, think about how much life changed, the 20 years after the printing press was invented, or the 20 years after the wheel was invented, or anything that was just so profoundly interacted with human experience. So that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing sort of these aftershocks of these incredible inventions.
And do the trolls, are they, in some cases, I feel like they don't even know they're trolls, right? Are they even like that self-aware to be like, I am a troll and I am going to wake up this morning and I am going to just be angry at the world. And then I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be the best troll I can be again. Like, are they doing that on purpose, or are they just not even realizing, that they're just wasting their lives? How do you think that works?
A lot of, I think there's a range of self-awareness too. I think there's oblivious, as a matter of fact, what I was talking about before about the narcissist, there's a type of narcissist that they call the oblivious narcissist, completely unself-aware. I think you get that. And then I think you get, the awareness leaks in, and that's probably where you get some substance abuse. How do I make myself, I'm behaving in just such a sort of a rotten way. How do I cope with that? Then it becomes another thing. So it just piles on. But, it's poison, and it's a cesspool. I'm much more interested in how we behave and how we adapt.
Who's we?
People who are, people who are in that environment, who are not a troll, how we behave. Well, I used to tell you years ago, just ignore it, right? That was a coping mechanism that's very, very effective. In my own personal life, my tendency has been, and I think this has more to, there's more to it than just the troll. There's the troll. I think there's the political climate. I think there's the whole level of hostility that is a social phenomenon occurring these days. But my response has been for the last couple of years, especially even more for the last, 6 months or so, has been just to not be involved. And I've sort of just removed myself from the environment more and more. That's just for me. I think there's other people who, especially people who are benefiting from social media. If you are interacting with really constructive people and learning a lot, young people, it's amazing for. A guy like Michael Batnick has told me his story about how he learned so much. And then there's this new guy, I forget his name. I saw him on Bloomberg the other day. He's a market historian. What a great kid. He comes on and is really leveraging social media in an incredibly positive way. I wish I could think of his name. I'm sorry that I forgot if you're listening. But, if you're not, and then there's that negative aspect is impeding, and it's filling up emotional space in your life that you have other things to do with. Why interact even at all? The trolls are always going to be there. I used to say, when we're talking about markets, I used to say, markets are going to be irrational as long as humans are involved with them. It doesn't matter whether there's quants building these machines. It doesn't matter. As long as humans are programming those machines, as long as there's human involvement in any way, markets are going to remain irrational. It's the nature. As long as, as long as we have sort of ubiquitous self-publishing and this, internet that is interconnected across multiple nodes across the globe, you're just going to have this element. They're just going to be there. Nothing you can do about it. Can't write a book and solve the problem. There have been some really great attempts to monitor and control. I remember years ago, what's the name of that guy? I can't remember anybody's name anymore. But there was a guy at the Huffington Post who created this thing where he would put trolls in this mode where if they were signed in and trolling, they could see their own messages, but nobody else could see them. It was genius, right? It was this brilliant thing. And then all of a sudden they were hollering into a vacuum and they would eventually just go away. He's the same guy who runs Rebel Mouse. Oh man, I wish I could remember that. Well, what a brilliant contingency to add to a comment section, right? Oh, okay, so we've identified you. We know you're an a-hole. We're just going to allow you to continue to see your comments as if they're just there, and we're going to hide them from everybody else. So you don't even know you're being muted. And eventually what they found was a lot of people went away. A lot of people would just go away because nobody was fueling their fire. They weren't getting the rise that they were looking for that you were mentioning earlier.
The attention.
The attention. They weren't. That's the fuel for the fire, right? That's the wood burning.
So the young guy, the finance history guy, Jamie Catherwood, is who you were referring to earlier, Phil.
That's
so
who
shout
I'm
out to
talking
Jamie.
about.
Yep.
Oh, guys like Batnick and Jamie, those guys are beautiful. And what they're doing is they are, social media are tool sets. They are masters at the tools. Awesome. And they have something to say. There's brilliance there too. And they're focusing that brilliance. They're disciplined. I remember Batnick's first few blog posts. If you go back and you look at his first few, they weren't what they are now. He was more, just sort of had a great sense of humor. Now he's added this whole other layer where he's also a brilliant market researcher, whole other layer. So you got the sense of humor and you got that amazing. With Jamie, It's that market historian, really a great little thing he's doing. That's just beautiful. It's the antithesis of the troll. You know, he's nourishing the world instead of trying to starve it.
So the advice that you're giving, you know, I mean, the same advice you've given me for over a decade, you know, you're giving everybody else, like, just who cares what other people think? Keep your head down, do what you think is best, worry about yourself, make the trade you want to put on, you know, make the decision for your business that you want to make, and who cares what anybody else thinks, right?
Yeah, just completely ignore them. Just you're not even there. Go, you know, GFY.
All right, now flip the script, because we're going to have trolls listening to this, because, you know, the title will say trolls on it, and you know, they'll be
Bring
like,
it on.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
me. You know, so what advice do you have to the trolls?
I have no advice. I have no.
Come on,
I have nothing.
girls. Look in the mirror.
No,
nothing.
Yeah, here's why. There's a reason for that, though, because I'm just not interested anymore. I did it. Been there, done that, and there's
Pearlman,
just
stop.
going to be there.
I'm asking you.
Okay.
I'm asking you.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you have to the trolls? Yeah, if you were sitting in front of a troll,
get a hobby. You know, get a constructive hobby. Go. Okay. Go find something constructive. What do you love? What is it? Do you have an interest? Do you like building model cars, or do you love, you know, studying bridges, or, you know, did you always want to be an architect? Go out and live and be an architect. You know, I mean, that's just, you know, there has to be something under there that you'd love to embrace. Go embrace it, and that is, you know. But that's the reason that I say I got no advice, though, is because that advice is completely useless in 99.99% of the cases, because those guys aren't, you know, they're not hearing that. There's no interest in there's no interest in the real world.
You don't even feel bad a little bit, like, you know, that they're fighting some sort of demons, like hard demons. Like, you don't even feel like a little bit of sympathy for these, like, losers?
No, I know. I'm just not interested anymore. I mean, just not interested. They're you know, I've just seen it so many times, and, you know, in general, more selfish than I used to be, in a healthy way. I mean, you know, I'm interested in my own well-being, the well-being of my family and friends, the well-being of my employer, and that's what I just focus on. So I don't really have time. I don't really have I don't really have an interest. I couldn't care less. Sorry, I thought maybe, you know, if you thought maybe you would get some advice. Sorry, you might want to call a shrink. Hey, if you're a troll listening today and you really do want to change, call a psychologist in your area. Maybe they'll help you.
And to be a fly on the wall, like with the troll and the psychologist, and it's like, all right, Mr. Troll, like, you know, what can I help you with? It's like, well, I wake up every day and I get on Twitter and I look for the most successful people I can find, and then I just hate on them all day long. You know, like, what does the shrink, like, say to that?
Yeah, there's nowhere to begin, man. You're not really. The prognosis is not great.
All right, Pearlman, listen, the way I take it, the same way that I've been taking it from you for over a decade, you know, there's going to be angry people out there. Not my problem, you know, press the block button. See you later.
Let me turn it back on you. What got you to bring this up? We haven't talked about this in years. I mean, we talked about this years and years ago. What brought it up? Was there a case in particular, or something in particular that brought it up to you, or what was the, you know, why is this coming up today? I'm curious.
You know, I have some friends that are struggling with it. You know, it's affecting their trading. It's affecting their business decisions. You know, they're underachieving. You know, these are people that should be making millions and millions of dollars a year, and they're making nowhere near that. And it really has a lot to do with the way that they think other people perceive their decisions, and it hurts me. So I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts. I mean, I'm very lucky to have guys like you around me a long time ago where none of this affects me. Like it's very simple. You literally press the block button, they're gone from your life forever. You never have to hear from these people ever again, you know? So it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But it bothers others.
You have always been singular in your focus, knowing who you are and where you were going since I knew you. I remember, what was that bar we used to go to? I think it's where I met you. It was that bar in the Flatiron District. And you, even then, you know, we were talking about, oh man, you could have a blog or whatever. And, you know, we were drinking beers. But even then, you just had this, you were young, man. You were in your 20s for sure. And you were just like, I'm going to do this. And so it never, you know, you never allowed yourself to get derailed and never cared what people think. But it's too bad to hear. I'm sure that person is, you know, whoever the people you're talking about who are sort of running into some roadblocks there, it must be frustrating for them. It must be really frustrating that's the block.
Yeah, I see it, you know. So you know, I reached out to you. I'm like, Phil, I want to talk about trolls. So that's today's episode of the Money Game. Reach out to us on Twitter. Let us know what you think. Email me, info@allstarcharts.com. If you have any questions, if you have any topics that you want us to cover on things like this, we're happy to do it, right, Pearls?
Definitely.
All right.